And I was under the impression that upon finishing Exile, not just in my own experiences listening to the track individually, or perhaps some would say with you, because I did allow for a collaborative experience, given that I published all of my first impressions on this channel to the entirety of the album, including the 6 singles and the remaining 8 pieces, including the 2 from the deluxe edition, the exclusives. Maybe some of you aren't aware that I covered the remainder of the album. If so, I did. Well, not the remainder, the entirety. Maybe some of you were there for that collaborative experience. And it was a real treat to have that exchange. I've loved being able to spotlight music on this channel to a greater presence, and it's been a long ambition of mine for a while. And for Demon Hunter, who I've been a fan of for 12 years, of their 20-year run, it's been a long ambition for me to bring them on in particular, because I've really wanted to spotlight their music. I mean, they're truly gifted musicians, not just in the Christian metal scene. I mean, they're real legacy figures, but just in the rock scene in general, I've really come to respect them over the years. And Exile really impressed me as a release. Fresh in many ways, in some ways experimental as well, but it had that familiar Demon Hunter quality to it that always makes it a very enticing embrace. And upon several re-listens as well, I can't tell you how many at this point I've had with particular songs of the album in its entirety, I've really come to respect it. Like I said, it's very fresh and different and unique, and I especially apart from their past library. But it really has an interesting feel. But I was of the impression upon finishing that we had heard the completed vision. And so for at least a little while, given that music takes a bit of time to create, we'd be hearing about Demon Hunter sometime in the future, but it wouldn't be for a little while. Apparently I was wrong, not the first time, although I'm not sure any of us saw this coming, because this release was rather spontaneous, and I didn't find out about it until a couple days ago. So I'm looking at this a week later. I think I found out about it yesterday. The BRINK. I'm wondering if this is going to be a running thing with them at least into the new year, post-Exile. How far is this going to expand? Is it just one single? Or more, because I'm looking at a couple pieces of commentary on it, at least from the, what's one I have pulled up right now, Metal Injection. I'm looking at an interview that their frontman Ryan Clark gave, Greg Kennelty, the one who wrote the article. He said some very interesting things in here, and I'm wondering again, like I said, if the BRINK is going to be a release of new expansions to Exile to further embolden its vision. Not officially. We would say maybe, because if you're not familiar, Exile is deeply conceptual in its vision, and that's very unique as well to Demon Hunter. They've never done that before, in terms of building a lore and stuff. But the way that they say this, I'm going to pull a direct quote here. The Exile recording session left us with a number of extra songs. And I imagine that there's a bunch of tracks that perhaps are in the gestation stages or in rough draft form, but I find it really interesting that he specifies that. Like, is the BRINK first of a long run? I don't know. I mean, like I said, as I'm filming this too, this is kind of funny. I just finished editing everything I have for Exile thus far. I've been waiting to release. I promised you a while ago, again, I would cover the entirety of the album, and I have. But I'm going to release the last 4 tracks of what I have left tomorrow. So I found out about this yesterday, which I'm saying again, it's rather shocking. Like, I didn't know this was going to be, that we were expanding further with new music from Demon Hunter, like, a couple months after the first album. And again, is this going to be the first track? And it seems perhaps most of these other pieces, if there are more, are going to follow along the path of the experimental line. The BRINK is. It's not only got a very 80s-esque theme, I believe, that's kind of what they're stressing here. It's also more electronic in basis, which Demon Hunter hasn't really played with, maybe in seldom occurrences, maybe some on Exile as well that I'm forgetting about. That's more like a Knives thing. Some of you might not be familiar with that name. That's Ryan Clark's side project he did with the frontman of Project 86. It's actually really good. I think they released 2 albums. I might have that wrong. Or maybe an EP. Maybe one of them was an EP. I forget. It's been a couple of years, but I would recommend it if you've never heard it before. But that dipped more into the electronic, techno-type alternative music genre than Demon Hunter normally sets foot into. They're more metal. This is also apparently going to be... Let me see. There's a lot to take in with this. It's going to be an interesting piece, I think. Like I said, most of the pieces on Exile are quite complex and independent in their construction apart from other Demon Hunter releases. And this, I'm assuming, again, is going not only with the 80s electronic sound from what has been stressed, but it also has apparently a real feeling of anxiety as well as a mimicry of the score to Interstellar. That's what's specified. It has been years since I've watched that movie. And I will say, upon memory, it wasn't my favorite Christopher Nolan movie. I like Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker. Some of you might be not familiar with my work. I cover cinema on a more regular basis, so I keep a keen eye on projects like that. But I saw Interstellar way after its official release. I didn't see it in theaters. Maybe the score was good? I forget. I don't know. Maybe this will be a bit of a refresher opportunity. Maybe it'll come swinging back to me with the Brink. I don't know. Either way, I didn't think it'd be sitting back here this soon with Demon Hunter, yet here we are. Maybe the first of many occurrences. Who knows? I mean, I'm interested. And for those of you who perhaps have not heard Demon Hunter yet, I think you'll be in for a treat either way, even though, again, like I've said with the entirety of Exile, we're all experiencing these pieces fresh on this channel. So, I'm going to cue up the piece. I've got it already pulled up. We're going to get a first introduction to it together and listen to the song in its entirety. It's another one of those longer pieces, too, from them, about 1 second over 5 minutes. I have this queued up. I will also pull up the lyrics as well for not only myself, but also for you. If you're not familiar with the way I format my content on this channel, especially related to music, I like to provide every provision possible to the audience. And so if you're somebody that likes to read along with the message of the pieces as we go through them, I have the lyrics available for you on screen. And you'll see that in a second when the song cues up now. Yeah, definitely more electronic. Electronic rock is growing on me, admittedly. It hasn't been my favorite for a number of years, but I'm starting to get more gelled with it. It's a strong opener, though.
Freedom.
Softer ballad structure, okay.
We all should have known.
Ryan's vocals really shine on this album in particular, especially the softer stuff. There's a lot of variance too.
When freedom's alone.
It's good so far.
Power. We've more than we need.
I'm trying to place it as I'm hearing it in Exile, like where it would best fit.
If the feeling is right,
probably towards the end somewhere, maybe in the introduction.
we'll take till it bleeds.
It's gonna be closer to either Heaven Don't Cry or maybe perhaps like Godless, somewhere around there.
What have I done? How did
I like the very subtle rise of the momentum.
only
Keeps it in tune to get a softer piece. I like this.
dire as free? What have I done? How did I see
Bit more of an emphasis.
from the holiest high to the direst free? Someone
Nice joining.
show me the way.
It has a grand scale, even though it is much softer than what Demon Hunter's typically done in the past.
To glory and pain.
This is a really good build, though. Nice fade.
Oh, what have I done? How did I see
This is a very engaging listen.
holiest high to the direst free? What have I done? How did I see
I like how it's constantly changing its style a bit.
the direst free?
It would be more of a tune amplification.
Direst free.
It constantly variates itself. It feels really fresh.
Give me focus, give me hope, and keep me fighting. Give me just enough in rope to keep from hiding.
That's a beautiful piece.
Shelter down below. So now I'm riding. Oh, what have I done? How did I sink from the holiest high
got a fitting pacing too. I'm really noticing just how effective it is.
What have I done? How did I see from the holiest high to the direst spring? What have I done?
There we go.
How did I see
I'm curious to see how rough it's gonna get. We've only got a minute left.
to the direst spring? What have I done?
Yeah, much more of an emphasis I thought they would end with, too. I like these constant tonal shifts. They're really good. So smooth. More garbled sound, I like that. Really effective transition out.
What have I done? How did I sing
That was done very
the
well.
holiest high to the direst brink? What have I done? How did I sing from the holiest high to the direst brink?
That's smooth. And for him to end it in terms of vocal isolation on that, that's great. Ryan's vocals, wow, that is impressive. That is very Knives. It's also really like I said, starting this out, I'm much more a metal guy, even though the experimentation I've given to many groups on this channel, in particular to style, and I have tried out many different artists. It hasn't been only I'm explaining this for those of you who perhaps are coming at this on the first introduction. It hasn't only been familiarized talents to me, or established names like Demon Hunter, who again I've been a fan of for 12 years, so I'm very familiarized with their sound. But there's many times I gauge new artists. In particular, I've had a deeper reverence grow, in part from some American listens as well. Let's say, for example, Starset, MNQN. I'll come back to that. That's a spin-off project as well, very much like Knives was for Demon Hunter. MNQN is a spin-off with Dustin Bates, the frontman of Starset. That's his side, or another one of his side projects. Again, I'll come back to it. That's a really good comparison to bring up to this song. But as well in the, some of you might know how much I love the European metal space. And they've got a lot of groups out there that play around with electronic sound effects. For example, Fall of a Cypher, Anima Veil, I'm trying to make a couple, Metalite as well. It's been growing on me. And for me, electronic music, again, or Dead by April as well, they're sort of hit or miss, right, in that genre. I have to sense a real melodic emphasis. For me, I'm not a big EDM guy unless there is that musical baseline and foundation. I don't like if it's just a bunch of, like, frenetic, combined notes. Like what you would hear at a club where everybody sounds like they're almost drunk, you know, in regards to what beats they're putting together. It's just, it sounds so schizophrenic and it's hard to follow. It's disassociating. The music for me, again, like I've said in the electronic space, I've been growing in it, in my appreciation for a bit. But experimentation has helped. Knives, in part, helped with this. MNQN as well. That has a very specific style. And I can see why, perhaps, in thinking about it, though I was trying to challenge myself in figuring out where it could best be placed in Exile, and I'm still leaning toward either the beginning or like towards the Heaven Don't Cry, Silence the World direction. Although the tone of the piece lyrically makes me put it more so in the godless, along the way territory, but even then I'm a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't necessarily put it there either, because it's so, I mean, I don't know. I see why, again, it was cut a bit in style, but it really, like every piece thus far in Exile, I'm impressed by the individuality of what the group is experimenting with, and that's been a key observance I've seen with particular tracks, not only in what's been articulated as well from the group, and I don't have it with me right now, but I recommend, again, like I said, if you want that full perspective of Exile and you haven't had it yet, buy the Deluxe. You get that booklet with it that goes much more, which has been typical in terms of the past Deluxe editions for this group and a number of their albums since, I believe, Outlive. you get an inside perspective, and I love to do this with music. I love to inquire where the headspace of the artist is at to better understand what they were going for in terms of meaning and impression and ambition, as well with the creation of their work. The booklet provides a commentary not only on the lyrics and the ideas behind the songs, as well as, in this part, this is fresh for them in terms of the Exile release, insight into the song's construction. And one of the pieces on there, Master, I love that one. Again, like I said, very experimental, like the majority of this entire album. But that piece in particular, I remember the biography section of that booklet discussing how that was a testing ground, I guess, for Demon Hunter in the future. Like, where do we take our music going forward in terms of freshness? And every band, has to consider that process. We can't, ride on the coattails of a particular song or work forever. You have to constantly add some freshness to keep renewed interest or to bring in new audiences as well. I understand that. It's not just about perhaps the primary audience, and of course that is a key ambition to satisfy them as well, but you want to figure out what the identity of the group is going forward and constantly keeping it fresh. Totally understand that. The Brink, as a Demon Hunter release, I think it sinks in quite well in that territory. And I'm having trouble trying to place it best in Exile if it had been included. I'm glad it was released. It's quite beautiful. It's very different from every other track on that album. And it's, again, I'd say in tracks that maybe it's a close approximation to Master's probably the closest, especially with some of those ballad sections, although this is much more electronic bass. And those transitional phrases are great. The constant momentum, the construction of the piece, working up to that higher crescendo. Yeah, what he was saying in the interview I specified for Metal Injection, how do you say it? There's a feeling of anxiety in the main key pattern, which is deliberate. We wanted to feel like that moment in a movie where things start to intensify and you're not sure how it's going to shake out. Yeah, I wondered. That was kind of the experience I had going in too. I'm like, and I didn't even read, I more so skimmed that quote. But putting that in conjunction to the piece and the experience we just had, yeah, that totally makes sense. Because I'm sitting there waiting for, is it going to get heavier? Where's that coming in? Because you constantly hear the construction of each verse changing in the music, especially each iteration of the chorus as well. There's some variation towards the end where it starts to take on that rougher bass line, right? That more metal emphasis side, and then you start to hear the music get into this garbled space, sort of like it's fading out on a television set, and then it completely drops, so especially towards the end, it kind of lingers for a bit until it's just gone, and you're leaving Ryan Clark's beautiful vocals, and very mesmerizing vocals as well, in total isolation and concentration. I thought it was just great. It's a beautiful experience, and again, I'm very grateful this track was released. That is a very dynamic work, like the entirety of Exile has been. It is very Knives, though. That's interesting. Man, that's impressive. I want to hear more. If there's a future for some of these extra songs, I mean, they said there's a number of them. I'm open. I mean, I always am considering Demon Hunter. I mean, like I've said, 12 years a fan. I'm more than devoted. But the Brink, again, like I said, the main takeaway from Exile for me is just how fresh this album is, apart from all their other releases. And I knew it would be good. And I've had plenty of time to consider, particular releases that felt very similar to Demon Hunter, like from the beginning that Exile started its release. Freedom is Dead. There's that metal side that was so interesting to listen to and familiarized, right? But then as we've gone along the way, no pun intended, it's one of the tracks you're not familiar off of Exile. The variation to my familiarity and my experiences, that pleasant subversion, to borrow a phrase used in the cinema world a lot, but in a negative context, of subverting expectations, there is subversion done well. And I felt that Demon Hunter's Exile was that in full, even considering the two exclusive tracks. Adding the Brink on in consideration, great. It's a wonderful work. I see why it wasn't included, but I'm grateful that it was released as a single. And I'm very curious to hear some of these other tracks in particular that the band envisioned and yet didn't make it to official publication within the Exile consideration. I'm really curious, because the Brink is very inventive, familiar, but interesting. And maybe, again, like I said, for somebody who's growing into this space but is slowly familiarizing himself, and here's familiarity to other projects that have become favorites of mine, again, bringing up the MNQN connection, or Knives, this has a very reminiscent sound to both fields. It's very MNQN, to be honest with you. Which is funny, I said as well with the vision at the start of covering Exile, their lore is very similar to Starset. So I'm surprised by how many connections to Dustin Bates' work are there with this album, or some of its side projects that didn't make it to official release. I don't know what they were going for, but it's just kind of a surprising coincidence to me. But that was a very pleasurable experience, and I hope for those of you at the Brink, this is a fresh experience for as well. Maybe you can go back on your own first experience if this isn't that, and you can think perhaps to your impression if we are on the same page in our verdict here. But I'm not surprised I liked it. I pretty much like everything from Demon Hunter as is. But I'm, again, very surprised with the releases from this group. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below on the piece, whether you are an experienced Demon Hunter fan like myself, or you're perhaps coming to this group entirely fresh. And if that happens to be you, I do welcome you very proudly into the Demon Hunter family. And I highly recommend, if you haven't been experienced to their past works, there's a wealth of a library to get accustomed to, and you're going to like them. Take it on faith from me. Again, 12 years, I know for certain. You'll like them. Let me know your thoughts down below, on particularly with the Brink. I'm very impressed with it. Like I said, the entirety of Exile is, for me, the key word of that album. If there's a thesis to be stated, is fresh and independent. And the Brink is that in a nutshell. It's really interesting to, again, hear these types of constructions that, for me, are so unfamiliar to me in tone, and yet they have that Demon Hunter background to them. But they're just such captivating listens, especially on their originality. And they're quite competent releases, but it's just how specific they are in their vision and experimentation. That just... I'm still always at this unique placement in recognizing these works. Demon Hunter just continues to impress. But 11 albums later, they grow in their captivation and my adoration almost every release in some unique way, and Exiles has had a wealth of them. And if the Brink, if we're going to consider it maybe as part of that in association, the same applies. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.